Welcome to Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. And if you think this year's campaign commercials have been tough, you weren't watching in 1964.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
We'll see what happens after that tonight, as we will be visited by the ghost of campaign commercials past. We'll also begin a 4-week partnership with the website Tech President to follow the primary campaigns as seen on the internet. And we'll dive deep into one campaign issue, the economy. Yes, New York, Clinton, Obama, and Edwards do differ on this and other issues. But first, here are this week's online video picks. All 5 picks this week come from the Tech President website, and they're all campaign video, beginning with the latest smash hit on YouTube from the voter known as Obama Girl.
Clinton still enjoys a commanding lead in national polls.
Hillary Clinton attacking Barack Obama.
To put America in the hands of someone with little national or international experience.
He's on the ropes, Dave. The man's got no experience. People know it. That's why we're ahead in the polls.
Obama Girl seems to have gotten over her fixation on C-SPAN. Maybe Obama kept her waiting too long.
When Truman said I was nothing more than a hussy with nice yams, I wanted to quit, but I didn't. Girl, your candidate needs you. See that look in their eye? That's what you used to have. The eye of the donkey. You gotta get that back. This ain't Illinois, this is Iowa, girl.
Obama Girl.
Obama Girl's at it again.
She has tremendous influence. But is it enough to get Obama into the Oval Office?
Obama Girl's back.
That's a problem with democracy.
If you're going to bring down Hillary, you're going to need some help.
Obama Girl, say hello to an old friend.
They got me, kid.
So that has only been seen more than 1.3 million times on YouTube. Guess why? Hey, anyone remember Max Headroom, the artificial intelligence TV character from the 80s? Well, a YouTube user who goes by Keith IB remembers him and had this thought: Mitt Headroom.
I'm sorry I can't be with you today, but I appreciate the opportunity to address by videotape. Let me speak very directly and candidly about where I stand.
We do have tough gun laws in Massachusetts. I support them.
I support the Second Amendment.
I believe that abortion should be safe and legal in this country.
I'm pro-life.
So I follow the march with Martin Luther King.
Pretty much all my life. Varmints, if you will.
You sit down with your attorneys and tell you what you have to do.
I'm Mitt Romney, and I...
So which Mitt is the real it? Video pick number 3. If Obama becomes president, this speech excerpt will go down in history as one of the greats.
Thank you, Iowa. They said this day would never come. They said our sights were set too high. They said this country was too divided, too disillusioned to ever come together around a common purpose. But on this January night, at this defining moment in history, you have done what the cynics said we couldn't do. Have done what the state of New Hampshire can do in 5 days. You have done what America can do in this new year, 2008. In lines that stretched around schools and churches, in small towns and in big cities. You came together as Democrats, Republicans, and independents to stand up and say that we are one nation, we are one people, and our time for change has come.
Do you get chills when you watch that? If Obama is elected, it's his JFK moment. If Obama isn't elected, well, the winners write history, don't they? Video picks number 4 and 5 will always be remembered as the moments that won New Hampshire for Hillary Clinton. This one is from the ABC debate 3 days before the vote.
Wait a minute now, wait a minute. I'm going to respond to this because obviously making change is not about what you believe. It's not about a speech you make. It is about working hard. There are 7,000 kids in New Hampshire who have health care because I helped to create the Children's Health Insurance Program. There are 2,700 National Guard and Reserve members who have access to health care because on a bipartisan basis, I pushed legislation through over the objection of the Pentagon, over the threat of a veto from President Bush. I want to make change, but I've already made change. I will continue to make change. I'm not just running on a promise of change. I'm running on 35 years of change. I'm running on having taken on the drug companies and the health insurance companies, taking on the oil companies. So, you know, I think it is clear that what we need is somebody who can deliver change. And we don't need to be raising the false hopes of our country about what can be delivered. The best way to know what change I will produce is to look at the changes that I've already made.
So that's the anger. Now we'll see the sadness in video pick number 5. But this has a surprise ending. You know the beginning. A woman in New Hampshire asked Clinton why she is so wonderful and how she gets up and does it every day.
It's not easy. It's not easy. And I couldn't do it if I just didn't, you know, passionately believe it was the right thing to do. You know, I have so many opportunities from this country. I just don't want to see us fall backwards. You know, so, you know, this is very personal for me. It's not just political. It's not just public. I see what's happening, and we have to reverse it. And some people think elections are a game. They think it's like who's up or who's down. It's about our country. It's about our kids' futures. And it's really about all of us together. You know, some of us put ourselves out there and do this against some pretty difficult odds. And we do it, each one of us, because we care about our country. But some of us are right and some of us are wrong. Some of us are ready and some of us are not. Some of us know what we will do on day one, and some of us haven't really thought that through enough. And so when we look at the array of problems we have and the potential for it getting really spinning out of control, this is one of the most important elections America's ever faced.
Now, the surprise ending that you may not know, the woman who asked the question decided to vote for Obama. She didn't like the way Clinton converted her tears right into a political attack at the end of that. And those are this week's online video picks. What else is happening online now that it's primary season crunch time? Well, for that, we are joined by Mika Sifry, editor of Tech President, the website devoted to following how the campaign is playing out online. We will be partnering for the next 4 weeks with Tech President all the way to the night after Super Duper Tuesday. Mika, welcome to the program.
Great to be here, Brian.
And we pulled those 5 as kind of the big 5 viewed videos, or among the biggest 5 viewed videos from your website collection of what's going on online. Do these things matter? Like the first video that we saw, Obama Girl.
Yeah.
A lot of fun to watch. It's gotten more than 1 million views. Does it matter to the election?
Those don't matter that much because, I mean, this is where the internet is not just a source of serious news, it's also a source of entertainment. And we've noticed as the year has played out how there's a whole coterie of aspiring comedy writers and would-be models who have noticed that you can make a sort of political, satirical message about the election, put it up on YouTube, and if it's any good, it may just get you a gig on Saturday Night Live. So, you know, this doesn't, I think, have that big an impact. Maybe the first Obama Girl video, when, you know, the very first one may have convinced some people that, you know, Obama was the JFK candidate. But no, I mean, you know, this is just a sideline.
And with some of the others, like the Clinton crying moment,
yeah,
I feel like I've seen it a million times. In the old days before the web, or before web video became easily accessible, you might have seen it a couple of times on the TV evening news if they chose to run it, or you might have seen a little piece of it re-aired as they shortened and shortened the soundbite. Here, if people want to, they can go click on it. I don't know how many hundreds of thousands or millions of
800,000 last I looked on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So does that change anything?
Well, I think that there are two things that are different. The first one is it's not a sound bark anymore. You know, the soundbite shrunk down to a bark. Television is the arena of scarcity. They don't have any room to really show you the whole event, so you get a little snippet. It's not the whole story. Here, with that Hillary video, you can see not just the moment where she breaks down, but you can also see the moment where she kind of, you know, winds up again and hits Obama kind of obliquely with a political attack. And I think that is significant in all kinds of ways. You can see the whole picture. The fact that people are going online to watch these videos, however, that's the important difference here. Is it's not like television, because you have to choose to go watch something online. By and large, most of these are videos that people are watching because their friends are sharing them with each other. Somebody sends you a link, says, you got to watch this. It's really good. The other big difference, and I think the Obama clip that you showed is a good example of this, is the average length of these political videos, the ones that the campaigns put up, is way longer than a 30-second TV ad, which they would have to spend, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars on. And people are watching these. If you look at, for example, Obama, and I know you have a chart to show with Obama's numbers. We've got, I think, close to 9 million views on YouTube for videos put up by the Obama campaign.
9 million.
And one of the things you need to know is YouTube only counts a view if somebody watches the whole thing. And the average...
Is that right? If you click on something and start it and you don't finish it, if it's a 10-minute video and you watch 8 minutes of it?
They will not count that as a view.
Wow.
So what that means, and Obama's videos are like mini documentaries. A lot of them are 5, 10 minutes long. People are watching these at full length. 8 million is just the number of views. Obviously, there's probably, you know, another 20 million where they started watching and they didn't watch all the way through. So what does that
mean, really? What does that mean to democracy? How does it change democracy?
I think, well, it's an enormous boon in two ways. First of all, if you are not the best financed candidate, okay, up until now, you were basically out of it if you couldn't spend tens of millions of dollars to get your message out on television. And it's true that television still matters a lot. There are a lot of people who still primarily get their news from television, though the latest studies show that young people in particular are going much more to the web than any other medium, newspapers, TV, radio, God forbid. And that's very, very significant. It levels the playing field. And then the other big change, and we didn't really see it so much here, maybe that Max Headroom video was the only example of voter-generated content. But it's not just a level playing field for the less financed candidates. It's an open playing field for voters who want to speak too.
And anything could conceivably catch fire.
Exactly.
If it's well done and catches the essence of something.
Exactly.
Let's take a look at some slides. Let's put them up. These are, and Mika just referred to this first one, these are indications of what people are doing what online. So walk us through this. What are we looking at?
What we're looking at, this is a chart showing the candidates' YouTube videos. It's done in partnership with a company called TubeMogul. And
this, again, is the number of views of videos.
Total views.
For each candidate.
For each candidate. We're looking at the Democratic candidates. The yellow line is Obama.
Way up at the top.
Way up at the top.
And this is the last month. So we see that about 2 weeks ago, I guess probably just around Iowa, the curve started to go up even more steeply.
The big jump there is, in fact, that video that we watched a clip from, which overnight he had more than 600,000 views.
Wow.
a lot of people said, if you didn't see his victory speech, go watch it. And that's clearly what happened for him. You see a little bit of a jump also for Hillary, who's in the blue, and then also Edwards, who's in the red.
They're very close, but she actually catches him and passes him slightly.
Right. And, you know, that's a sign, I think, that, you know, obviously the race is tightening around those three candidates. And Hillary has not done as much with YouTube as Edwards or Obama has been trying to do.
All right. Now, before we put up the next one, actually, let's put up the next one. Can we go right to the next one? Let's see if that's there. Of course, Ron Paul videos on the Republican side tend to lead the world. And we'll see some Ron Paul stats in a minute and talk about him and why he isn't getting more votes since he's getting so many views. But here's another chart pertaining to the Democrats. What's this?
Okay, so this is mentions in the blogosphere. Okay, so the part of what's changed is everybody who wants to have their own digital soapbox can create a blog. There are millions of them now worldwide, tens of millions, and probably 10 or 15 million political bloggers in the United States, or people who often write about politics. So what this is charting, this I think goes back to end of July, is the track for the top three candidates, Clinton, Obama, and Edwards, and how often they're just being mentioned in English language blogs. What you can see from this chart is obviously, you know, Clinton and Obama are both dominating the conversation.
Right, the blue and the dark green. And again, this is the last month. Oh, no, this is the last 6 months or so.
Right.
But the spike comes, obviously, once the voting begins.
Iowa, New Hampshire, it's as if the number of people paying attention to politics has quadrupled in just the last few weeks. And, you know, you're going to see that on the Republican side as well.
All right, let's go right on to the next slide. We're going to see a Republican version of the same thing. This, again, is mentions in blogs.
Right.
Ron Paul is the blue, so you can see how he dominates most of the period for the last 6 months. Huckabee is the red, so Huckabee really comes on strong toward the end.
Right. And what it also tells you, I mean, there's some other things going on here. Look at Giuliani, for example. He's nowhere on this chart. He's been leading in the national polls almost all year until more recently, but when it comes to organic conversation about him, people who are online and already politically active, one of the things that, you know, we need to say is the bloggers are not a perfect representation of the entire population. They tend to be people who are more politically engaged, they're paying more attention, they're activists, they're volunteering on campaigns, they're donating money, they're influencers. So even if this doesn't track exactly to where they are in the polls, it's a leading indicator of where the energy is.
Right, and where the opinion leaders are.
Right.
So let's look at this one more slide that also pertains to the Republicans, and this is...
no, actually, this is all the candidates.
Oh, this is all the candidates. This is the one that looks like Yosemite National Park. And Ron Paul, I think, is the El Capitan Peak there.
Right, he's the blue. What this is from Hitwise. And what they give us is once a week we get the overall percentage of web traffic that each presidential candidate is getting out of the entire field.
Now, Fred Thompson is the orange. So back around September, when he announced his candidate, there was a lot of web interest in Fred Thompson.
There was a whole surge of interest on the Republican side. They thought he might be their savior. He might be the Ronald Reagan of the field. There was a lot of excitement. As you can see, however, it has not lasted for Fred Thompson. On the Republican side, Ron Paul is dominating, and you could ask, what? You know, Ron Paul, he's 4th or 5th in the voting.
In the votes, every place that's voted so far, he gets maybe 7–8% of the votes, something like that.
Right. So, but why is he getting so much more attention on the web? And I think here what you have is a case where the web is like, if you can't get the information you want to get from the mainstream media, the web is the great all-purpose library. And so there are a lot of people who are interested in this guy, Ron Paul, or maybe they're just driving along and they see some people holding up one of those Google Ron Paul signs that all the Ron Paul supporters are you know, holding over highway overpasses. So people are curious. And because you can't find out much about Ron Paul from your newspaper, your TV news or whatever, people are going on the web and they are looking. And he has been very smart in giving his supporters free rein to do whatever they want in terms of blogging or posting on YouTube. So they have a lot to talk about.
Now, one thing before we run out of time, your colleague at Tech President, Josh Levy, says online buzz, as opposed to more traditional research, actually got New Hampshire right when the pollsters got it wrong before New Hampshire. You think that's true?
Well, I question how much the buzz is a predictor of people's votes in individual states. I'm still not 100% sure that we should rely on this because it's more a measure of intensity, and voting, while it's true for a lot of people, is an act of, it is something you have to decide. It's a positive act I'm going to take. But what we saw in New Hampshire is there's a lot of fluctuation at the last minute.
So we're going to do 3 more weeks. You'll be here again. Some of your colleagues from Tech President will be here.
Right,
I'm
looking forward to it.
Keep following this with you guys on the web. What are you hoping to accomplish with Tech President by following internet political traffic?
Well, we think what we're living in is the dawn of a new age where the way politics works is opening up. And it's a moment where you can do more than chronicle how the campaigns are using the web and how voters are using the web to affect the campaigns. But I think ultimately what really gets us up each day is that we see the process opening up, and we can also do our part a little bit to point towards the candidates and the activists and the independent efforts that people do that make the best use of this technology to enhance democracy. So what we really see is that this is a chance where the actual game of politics may open up and get a little bit more accountable.
Great. Thanks for doing this with us.
Our pleasure.
Coming up, the Museum of the Moving Image shares clips of campaign commercials going all the way back to Eisenhower. Wait till you see what Eisenhower was running on in 1952. This is Brian Lehrer Live.
Do you want to complete your college degree while balancing career and family obligations? Do you want a flexible schedule and a challenging curriculum? If you've earned at least 30 credits or an associate degree, now's your chance to finish what you started at CUNY. Learn about CUNY's online baccalaureate in communication and culture. Visit cuny.edu/online or call 212-652-CUNY.
This is CUNY TV, the City University of New York.
Sure, my neighbors Jean and Louise, they may be superheroes with superpowers, but that doesn't make them so super at saving energy and money. I mean, I like them and all, but when Jean uses that power vision to cook dinner?
Honey?
Or when Louise or Starbright tries to save a little on the lighting bill?
Mom, a little light?
I may not be able to harness the power of the elements, but I save significant cash and help the environment with appliances, electronics, and windows featuring the Energy Star label. And I improved my home energy efficiency with insulation. My thermostat? Watch this. I'm just kidding. It's programmable. I don't have to lift a finger to save on AC and heating.
Mom, Dad's making fondue again.
So discover your own energy-saving superpowers. Go to ase.org/consumers.
This is Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. With so much money going into television and radio in this year's campaign, sometimes it feels as though quantity trumps quality, and sometimes it does. But it turns out that some ads really are more effective than others, which is the subject of a new exhibit called The Living Room Candidate, now open at the Museum of the Moving Image in Astoria, Queens, and also viewable online. So we are going to look back now at the ghost of election ads past with the co-curators of the exhibit, David Schwartz and Carl Goodman. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Brian. Thanks.
And you know what? Why don't we jump right into our first video, and we'll just say that this is an ad for Dwight Eisenhower in 1952.
Eisenhower answers America.
General, the Democrats are telling me I never had it so good.
Can that be true when America is billions in debt? When prices have doubled, when taxes break our backs, and we are still fighting in Korea? It's tragic, and it's time for a change.
David, Carl, Dwight Eisenhower running on change?
And the same 3 issues. Basically, his campaign focused on 3 issues. Get us out of this war in Korea.
Right.
Change the climate in Washington. And the cost of living, prices were going up. He was going to bring them down.
So, plus ça change. The more things change, the more people are still talking about change.
And the form of this ad utilized the man on the street question, and is quite similar in a way to the YouTube debates that were held recently.
And you know, I've never seen that until about an hour before the show, and I was absolutely shocked to see that this average American man on the street in 1952 was black.
There were some targeted ads. Eisenhower targeted women and targeted African Americans in some of the ads. The ad that we just saw, what they did was they filmed Eisenhower's answers first. He was reading off gigantic cue cards, and he did about 40 of these in one day in a Manhattan film studio. And then they went out the next day to Radio City Music Hall and grabbed some tourists, and they came in and filmed the questions and spliced them together.
Because he was stiffer than, say, Mike Huckabee on camera.
Right.
Let's jump to 1964. This may be the most famous campaign commercial ever by the Lyndon Johnson campaign against Republican Barry Goldwater.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 6, 8, 9.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
These are the stakes. To make a world in which all of God's children can live, or to go into the dark. We must either love each other or we must die.
Vote for President Johnson on November 3rd. The stakes are too high for you to stay home.
So, David, for people who've never seen that before, and there's a generation that probably has never seen it before, a nuclear bomb explosion, a mushroom cloud in presidential ad.
Well, that was what people were worried about at the time. That's one of the great things about these ads. You can watch a 60-second ad, and it's a time capsule. 1964, this was the year that Dr. Strangelove came out, just after the Cuban Missile Crisis. What was brilliant about this ad is that it is suggestive. It's a new style of advertising that started in the 1960s. So it's not the candidate talking right to you.
Mm-hmm.
The viewer puts together in their mind this image of the little girl and the nuclear explosion. And Barry Goldwater's not even mentioned in this ad, but you're supposed to get the inference.
And Johnson running on love, right? He said either we all love each other or we're going to die. Who runs on love? I noticed, by the way, that Martin Luther King uses love, the power of love, in his speeches a lot. And these are political civil rights speeches, but he constantly talks about love. I don't know that anybody would do that today. But Carl, did that spot air constantly on television? Is that why it's so famous?
Well, of course, these ads are so important as historical artifacts. I think that though our concerns at the time were different than they are today, the idea of playing on fear is a common theme that we explore in the online exhibit. In fact, on the website you can click on a themes button and then choose fear and see how over time different ads played on these concerns.
Fear of crazed Republican conservative warmonger Barry Goldwater in this case.
Now, this only aired once as a paid ad, one time.
One time.
And then it became,
once.
Yeah, and then it became a news story. The Goldwater campaign was furious, and it became a big news story. And this is exactly what happened with the Swift boat ads. They ran a few times as paid ads, but it turned into the news story of August 2004.
Right, and we'll get to the Swift boat ads.
Yeah.
But you want to talk a little bit about the overall conception of the exhibit at the Museum of the Moving Image?
First, we, of course, strongly encourage people to come to the Museum of the Moving Image in Astoria, but they will not see the living room candidate there. They'll see all sorts of other wonderful exhibits. This is an exhibit that was originally presented at the museum in 1992 and then in 2000 adapted for the Internet. So it is an exhibition that is to be experienced entirely online, just you and a broadband connection. And it is a very rich archive of presidential campaign commercials from 1952 all the way to 2004, which we tracked while it was happening.
Let's jump ahead to 1996. This is a Bill Clinton re-election ad. and using more modern television language, running against Bob Dole, or listen to what they refer to him as.
I want to be a civil engineer, astronaut, an orthopedic surgeon, an airline pilot.
President Clinton creating opportunity for our children. A $1,500 tuition tax credit, $10,000 of college tuition tax deductible, making most community colleges free, all college more affordable. Dole Gingrich tried to cut scholarships. Listen to Dole.
We're going to eliminate the Department of Education.
I want to find the cure for cancer.
President Clinton building a bridge to the 21st century.
I didn't know his name was Dole Gingrich.
Right. This is a perfect ad to me. It's got everything in it. It's amazing how much it packs into 30 seconds. It has a good guy and a bad guy. You hear this uplifting music in the beginning, then kind of horror movie music and black and white footage. All the techniques of filmmaking are used in this ad, and that's why we love this subject matter. It's high-stakes politics, but using all the movie-making techniques that we talk about at the museum.
And we're going to see that ad again later in the show as an example of something entirely different. But let's jump ahead to 2004. This is the aforementioned Swift Boat Veterans for Truth ad against John Kerry.
If you have any question about what John Kerry's made of, just spend 3 minutes with the men who served with him.
I served with John Kerry. I served with John Kerry.
John Kerry has not been honest about what happened in Vietnam.
He is lying about his record.
I know John Kerry is lying about his first Purple Heart because I treated him for that injury.
John Kerry lied to get his Bronze Star. I know. I was there. I saw what happened.
His account of what happened and what actually happened are the difference between night and day.
John Kerry has not been honest.
And he lacks the capacity to lead.
When the chips were down, you could not count on John Kerry. John Kerry is no war hero.
He betrayed all his shipmates. He lied before the Senate.
And John Kerry betrayed the men and women he served with in Vietnam.
He dishonored his country. He most certainly did. I served with John Kerry. John Kerry cannot be trusted.
Swift Boat Veterans for Truth is responsible for the content of this advertisement.
That's painful.
Still painful.
Haven't watched it in a while.
He dishonored his country, they actually said about this guy who was on the front lines.
And the way the Kerry campaign responded to this ad was releasing an 18-page memo to the press. So they didn't respond with TV ads. They were holding back in August because they were saving up their money for the fall. And they just didn't respond. And it's one of the basic rules of politics. You have to fight right back.
But the next thing we're going to see is another ad from that year, this time with the video response that came on its heels. So let's watch the ad.
How dare they drag the good name of the United States of America through the mud of Saddam Hussein's torture prison.
I want my country back.
We live in a time where we have a man sending us to war for fictitious reasons.
This president is a miserable failure.
He betrayed this country. He played on our fears.
Today, George Bush will lay off your camel, tax your shovel, kick your ass, and tell you there is no promised land.
So that's the ad. Remember that one? Let's play the response. This is a video response online before YouTube.
You've probably heard some prominent Democrats say some pretty awful things about President Bush. Democrats like Al Gore, Howard Dean, Adolf Hitler, and Dick Gephardt.
This president is a miserable failure.
He betrayed this country.
I want my country back.
He played on our fears.
George Bush will lay off your tax your kick your ass and tell you there is no.
But when Democrats say mean things about the president, it makes the president sad. Do you want to make the president sad?
Yourself.
Not an official ad.
Did the tear actually turn into the apostrophe? And it could segue right into the Hillary Clinton moment a few weeks ago.
That's right.
Even presidential candidates get sad.
Now that was independently made.
Who made it?
It was an independent.
I believe the author's name is Jason Olinger, at least on our website, and he's a member of a comedy troupe that currently has a series on MTV. Has the name Giant in it. I've maybe those in the studio remember. Also performs at the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater, which is an example also of how many people who began to do this in 2004, had a certain kind of energy that propelled them into doing other innovative things. It's going to be interesting to see what they do in 2008.
And this comes from a portion of the Living Room Candidate exhibit called the Desktop Candidate.
It was a new section that we added in 2004 because it was clear to us that so many things were happening now online with moving image media. There are also some games, some made for the candidates, some made independently. And what I found is that the second ad, this user-generated ad, is so much better made than the ad that it parodied.
Now, of course, Kerry lost, and I wonder how much you think it had an impact or how much it was even viewed, because this was, I guess, about 2 years before YouTube. So what was the venue for people to see this citizen journalism or citizen campaign commercial, and how did it get passed around?
From what I remember, there was a website called Music for America that had a political section, and the ad was featured there. That's the URL it came from. In addition to, there was a parody site that was created originally by a gentleman named Zach Exley, who has also gone on to do important things, and it was called gwbush.com. The URL is no longer active, but it was a fake George Bush website, which in 2000, because we were all quite naive at the time, fooled us into thinking it was a real George Bush website. I don't think today's citizens would be so gullible.
People are skeptical about whatever the websites claim to be.
But the Bush campaign had some very strong ads. They had a famous ad called Windsurfing, which took footage of John Kerry, out on vacation, a weekend windsurfing, and used it to get across the flip-flop message. And it was great. So the Bush campaign really defined John Kerry through the ads. And the Kerry ads were confusing and didn't have a simple, clear message.
One more. Online ad from campaign year 2008.
An important policy message from Governor Mike Huckabee.
My plan to secure the border? 2 words. Chuck Norris.
Mike Huckabee's a lifelong hunter who'll protect our Second Amendment rights.
There's no chin behind Chuck Norris's beard, only another fist.
Mike Huckabee wants to put the IRS out of business.
When Chuck Norris does a push-up, he isn't lifting himself up. He's pushing the earth down.
Mike's a principled, authentic conservative.
Chuck Norris doesn't endorse. He tells America how it's going to be. I'm Mike Huckabee, and I approve this message. So did Chuck.
Chuck Norris approved.
Brian Lehrer approved. I don't. You know, did you watch the Iowa caucus returns that night when Huckabee gave his victory speech? Two people were standing behind him: his wife and Chuck Norris.
Right. Yeah, well,
so that's how big a thing. That's how big a thing.
It was a big thing. I mean, he really made a big move in November from being a bottom-ranking candidate into the top tier. And you know, it's a very funny ad, very well made, but it had a few serious issues. It really emphasized gun control and immigration, so it's really well done.
And what's interesting to me also is that this picks up on a pre-existing thread of web videos, because there was already this you know, Chuck Norris, tough guy video universe out there. So Huckabee came in as a candidate and played into a pre-existing culture on the web. Do you agree?
Absolutely. It also shows the candidate's willingness to use humor in a way that we hadn't seen in previous elections. I think with the general election, I don't believe this is going to be a strategy that will work. I think looking presidential is going to become increasingly important, which unfortunately means far less entertaining web videos going forward.
I doubt it somehow. We will see. So it's nice to see these on television, but people can see this right from their desktops or their laptops, and many, many, many more ads. What's the web address?
Well, they can go to movingimage.us and then go right to the living room candidate. And
in addition, to steal a line from a previous segment, a Google living room candidate, or just simply campaign ads, and will be at the top of the page.
Great archive. Thank you both very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
This is Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. One piece of media mythology about the Democratic primary campaign is that Clinton, Obama, and Edwards agree on all the issues. It's not true. Yes, they largely agree on many things, but if you want to choose based on policy, not personality, you can. We'll compare them on America's #1 issue, the economy. To set the scene, liberal stalwart and New York Times columnist Paul Krugman has this interesting take on just how bad things are getting right now, or maybe not.
First question is, is this going to mean a recession? And let me say with great certainty, I don't know. And nobody knows, because part of the problem is that this is absolute havoc in the financial markets, but we don't know how much all this matters, really, in the end. It's certainly bad for housing, but housing had already taken a huge plunge anyway. How much worse can it get? How much this interferes with the rest of business, we don't know. And there are signs, if there used to be, when I studied international economics as a grad student, we had the grand old man Charlie Kindleberger teaching the course, and he used to say about balance of payments numbers that there are so many ways to calculate them that you can be always optimistic or always pessimistic depending on your temperament. And that's a little bit the way the economic indicators look right now. So if I want to get really ominous, I can tell you about commercial real estate seems to be hitting the tank now. On the other hand, consumer spending, apparently nothing can stop the American consumer. So, so I don't know. I mean, right now, I'd say odds of something that will formally be called a recession are about 50%. But that's in a way, there could be things that wouldn't actually be a recession but would kind of feel like it. There could be recessions that would be sufficiently mild that it wouldn't feel all that terrible. I'd say about 15–20% of something really, really bad, which is, but the truth is nobody knows. This is all uncharted. We never had this kind of financial mess before. So this is no precedence. How does it work out?
Paul Krugman at a Google event last month. And yes, New York, Clinton, Obama, and Edwards are different on some very important issues, including the economy. With me now to explain why are New York Times business correspondent Vikas Bajaj and Justin Fox, Time Magazine's business and economics columnist. Welcome, both of you, to WNYC. First things first, how bad is the economy?
Well, it depends on who you ask, Brian. It's not as bad as some would have you believe, but it's also sort of at a turning point, and so a lot could change, and we could be in a recession already. We won't know that for a few months, but certainly, I mean, we aren't seeing sort of a complete collapse of the economy. If you
no, but there's this sort of ominous backdrop when you watch what's happening with banks like Citigroup, with the financial system in general. Yeah. That I think that's where you look at the actual numbers out so far, whatever. But there's this feeling that there's something going on with the financial system that hasn't happened in at least 17 or 18 years.
Most definitely. So. There's a palpable sense that things are going to get worse. House prices are falling. They're expected to fall, almost as much, if not more, than they've already fallen. Foreclosures are going up, and and the employment picture is starting to weaken. All of those things are sort of foreboding recession.
So, by the way, I should have said welcome to CUNY TV. I think I welcomed you to the other place that I work, but we'll leave that behind. The President and Congress are reportedly considering a stimulus package. Now, that would take an act of bipartisanship, Democratic Congress, Republican President, very different on economics in general, a rare act of bipartisanship for this couple-of-year period. Do you know what kind of stimulus package they're considering?
Well, it seems the one thing that everybody seems to be able to agree on is some sort of income tax rebate. One-time rebate, do it quickly. My sense is you hear both parties talking about that. The issue, though, is there seem to be a bunch of Republicans in Congress, I don't know about the White House, who would like to try to hold things hostage for a while to see if they can exercise any leverage to get the Bush tax cuts, which are mostly going to expire year after next, extended.
So making a long-term economic policy out of unified desire for a short-term economic stimulus.
Right. Well, it's basically using whatever little bit of leverage they've got, because if a Democrat wins the presidency this year, which, that's what most people in both parties, I think, are banking on, although you never know, the Republicans in Congress are going to be in no position to be demanding extensions of those cuts on their terms. I mean, I'm sure some will get extended, but on the
do we see in general, and we'll go down the positions of some of the presidential candidates in just a minute, but do we see in general, at a time like this, Democrats proposing spending, like targeted spending on hurting constituencies, and Republicans proposing tax cuts?
Yeah, I mean, the Democrats are also proposing some elements of tax cuts. They want tax cuts. They will say they want tax cuts for the middle class, whereas the Republicans want tax cuts for the upper class. So that there's some element of where you inject this tax cut. I think Justin was talking about making these tax cuts permanent. The Democrats' response would be, let's let the tax cuts on the top income earners expire. Let's instead target the tax cuts to the middle class. There's some argument economically that the tax cuts to lower income people tend to benefit the economy more directly because they're more likely to go out and spend the money as opposed to save it.
Right, in the short term, they do. And then the whole basically, I mean, the overarching thing is most of the Republican economic ideas have to do with what they think will increase long-run growth. I mean, a lot of times they'll take credit for short-run cyclical booms like the last couple of years, but it's really, if there's any real economic justification for the Bush tax cuts, for other things, it's all about long-run growth, whereas the Democrats, and again, there are exceptions and all, but the assumption is the economy is going to grow. We want it to be divided fairly. And
is that pandering by the Democrats, or is that compassion by the Democrats? Because I guess what they're saying, if they want to give out some money now, even though it may not affect the long-term prognosis for the economy, is some people are hurting so much that we have to help them.
Well, if you look at the economic statistics over the past 30 years, you've got pretty good growth of the overall economy, but large segments of the population not joining in on it. So yeah, there's a certain thing to be said. Okay, we've done 30 years of doing what we can to make the economy grow and not worrying about the income distribution very much. Maybe it's time to think differently.
But middle class, working class wages have been relatively flat for a long time.
Relative to inflation, yes.
Relative to inflation. So I guess we'll see whether this recession is the one that reveals the whole U.S. economy to be built on a house of cards. Maybe that's debt, or whether it becomes like other recessions and we get our way through it after a couple of years. But I said we were going to demonstrate how Clinton, Obama, and Edwards are different on economic issues. From what I've been reading, it looks to me like Obama is proposing, almost like a Republican, a $250 tax cut or tax rebate for many working Americans. Clinton is proposing lots of little pieces of targeted spending, more unemployment benefits, more health benefits, things like that, to help specific constituency groups. Is that the way you see it happening?
Yeah, and I basically know about as much as you do from reading the same things. And there's always that element of, okay, they have these, this hasn't been issue number one for these guys yet. It's starting to become it because of the economic downturn, but you get a little bit of the sense, especially with Obama, that you know, it's something, he has his economic advisors, he's got some stuff up on his website, but it has not been the focus of what his campaign's about. So I'm not entirely clear how seriously to take all that. But yeah. And the Clinton administration, the other Clinton, that guy, Bill, his administration was very much full of all of these little targeted tax break here, spending there, in a overall scheme of being pretty fiscally responsible and careful and all, but lots of these little things.
Right. And remember I said that we were going to replay the 1996 Bill Clinton re-election ad. We're going to do that now because your colleague at the Times, David Leonhardt, wrote a real good analysis of the differences between Clinton and Obama.
Sure.
And he boiled it down to Obama more favors a kind of generalized gift or policy like this $250 tax cut or tax rebate. Clinton, classic Clinton, goes for specific targeted programs. And so in a way, nothing has changed in 12 years. Here's what Bill Clinton was saying in his ad in 1996.
I want to be a civil engineer, astronaut, an orthopedic surgeon, an airline pilot.
President Clinton, creating opportunity for our children. A $1,500 tuition tax credit, $10,000 of college tuition tax deductible, making most community colleges free, all college more affordable. Dole Gingrich tried to cut scholarships. Listen to Dole.
We're going to eliminate the Department of Education.
I want to find the cure for cancer.
President Clinton, building a bridge to the 21st century.
So Justin, small program, small program, small program. He certainly wasn't saying bring back the GI Bill, make CUNY free again, anything like that. But he was saying, okay, we're going to give you a, what was it, a tax credit on the first $10,000 you spend on education. Relatively little things, but that puts a little bit of money in a lot of people's pockets that they feel.
Right. And I guess the feeling from that, because I think if you talk to academic economists on campus, they're all dubious of stuff like that because you're getting so targeted. Although I do think there's a lot of support for the idea of you invest in education, you make it cheaper for people, then you get more educated people, and that actually does bring, that is a long-run economic growth thing. But I just think the Clinton administration, their economic policy people realized, hey, these things resonate. We can run TV ads about them, and that works.
And I think to some degree it's a response to the Republicans, because if they do something like the GI Bill, if Bill Clinton announced, when Bill Clinton announced big initiatives, he was often beaten back, and so the response was to come back with targeted things that was harder to fight for the Republicans to fight back on and say you're just doing big government tax and spend.
You're right. It was a defensive measure because they had tried to overhaul health care, you recall, in 1994. They lost even though they had a Democratic Congress and nothing got through. Then they had a Republican Congress, and so all they could do was these little things that would sort of triangulate
And most of them were structured as tax credits rather than as actual spending, even though it's really the same thing. But somehow rhetoric-wise, it's much less.
Now, you cover the housing crisis and foreclosures a lot.
Sure.
How do you see that playing into the presidential race?
I think it could be really crucial in several important states like Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Florida, Nevada, California. I mean, these are all states that are suffering from high foreclosure rates, and you know, I don't know if it's going to change sort of the traditional leanings of people in those states, but certainly it's going to even sort of the affluent, perhaps in places like Cleveland, are hurting, and so it's going to change the dynamic to some degree.
And those are a bunch of battleground states that have been really. I mean, you think. Not California seems to have sort of gone Democrat, but Ohio and Florida are
Nevada,
huge.
Arizona. I mean, these are all states where the housing boom was huge, and now it's not, and now they're suffering the consequences.
Hillary Clinton, by the way, and I wonder if either of you are familiar with this, apparently has proposed freezing interest rates for a certain group of people. Do you know what that is? Is that for homeowners?
Yeah, that is for homeowners. She's proposed a couple of different things. She's proposed a moratorium on foreclosures for 3 months, and she's this interest rate freeze plan has been around and it's been talked about, and this is sort of very similar to the Paulson plan
But she was talking about it.
She was talking about it earlier,
but that's for 5 years, isn't it?
That's for 5. Well, the Paulson plan is for 5 years, and there's
the what plan?
The Paulson plan, the Henry Paulson plan, the Treasury Secretary, which is sort of a derivation of the plan that Sheila Bair, who's the chairman of the FDIC, put forward. She wanted it to be frozen for all 30 years.
So what would that mean if people have an adjustable rate mortgage? That's scheduled to go up. It wouldn't go up for 5 years.
It wouldn't go up. They would be frozen at their initial teaser rate for. In this case, in the Paulson plan, 5 years, and the plan that Sheila Bair had proposed for the life of the loan.
Can they do that? I mean, some of these rates start at 1%, and then maybe unbeknownst to the borrower, to the homeowner, it mushrooms to 8% eventually. But is it fair to the lender to say, oh, no, you have to keep giving 1%?
I mean, this was an agreement with the lenders, and basically it was targeted pretty narrowly at people who could make the payments at the lower rate, but weren't going to be able to make it at the higher rate, which is a relative. I mean, at most, it's. I don't. You know better than me. How many tens of thousands, maybe 100,
There's
200,000.
disagreements over it. Some people, the administration would like to tell you that it's going to affect a large group of people. There's other people who say it's going to only affect 250,000 people.
But when Hillary Clinton says a 5-year interest rate freeze, this is not her idea. This is already coming out of the Bush administration.
These were the ideas with the mortgage crisis. Is sort of there are a few ideas, and they've been out there for a long time. Different candidates have apportioned different things.
But she was definitely talking about it. She should get some credit for being one of the people who brought the idea to the front
as a senator. So John Edwards, real quick, his whole line is "Fight corporate America." Does that apply to the housing issue?
To some degree, yes, it does. I mean, he was talking about the mortgage crisis early as well. Now he's had some issues. He works for he has an advisory role at a hedge fund, or had one, and that's been an issue for him. That profited on foreclosures because it had invested in a subprime lender.
Because it's Wall Street, not corporate America, that's the villain basically in the mortgage crisis more than anybody else. So. And it is interesting that his one real tie to corporate America is to Wall Street.
Thank you both very much. We are out of time. Very interesting. Good context for the election. With Super Duper Tuesday coming up, and that's it for tonight's show. We're here live Wednesday nights at 7:30 or online anytime at CUNY.TV. Next week, we'll keep following how the campaign is playing out on the web. And don't forget my daily radio show on WNYC, The Brian Lehrer Show, weekday mornings at 10. Tomorrow morning, Clinton, Obama, and Edwards' positions on nuclear power. Again, they are somewhat different. Tomorrow morning at 10 on AM 820 and 93.9 WNYC. Have a great night.